Good afternoon and welcome to the CIF Sac-Joaquin Section Football Playoff Preview Show. We've got a lot to run through with you today, folks, and thanks so much for joining us here on the NFHS Network and the NFHSnetwork.com for the unveiling of the football brackets here in the Sac-Joaquin section for the 2013 season. I'm Jeff Kurtz alongside Bob Moffitt. And Bob, there's been a lot of anticipation. The committee had a very heavy and heated debate about Divisions 1 through 6 over the course of the afternoon. They actually just completed their brackets maybe about 45 minutes ago. So one game running late, Jesuit and Oak Ridge went into overtime before a result came in. So we had to wrap that up, and then the brackets were able to be completed. So we've got a lot to talk about here today, Bob, but it should be a very interesting hour or so, folks. We're going to have interviews with some of the members of the Sac-Joaquin section who participated in the committee meetings here today that determined the playoff brackets here in 2013.
And they're going to go over specifically a couple of reasons why some teams were moved from places where you might normally expect to see them. And that conversation will be interesting to hear.
So we'll have on Will DeBoard from the Sac-Joaquin section and also Commissioner Pete Sacco a little bit later on in the broadcast. But, folks, we know you are here to find out who is playing who in Divisions 1 through 6. So we'll tell you how the show is going to run. We're going to start out with Division 6 and work our way up to Division 1, give you the brackets, the teams, the matchups. Bob and I will give you our quick first take on what we think about these particular brackets in each of these divisions. Then we'll move on to the interviews and give you a little bit more background as to how the committee ended up slotting the teams where they ended up in, whether it was a 1 seed or a 16 seed or anywhere in between. Folks, we've got it all for you here on the NFHS Network. So let's get right to it, and we will start with the bracket for Division 6. And you can see right away, folks, the number 1 seed is Bradshaw Christian. Bradshaw Christian with an 8-2 record gets the 1 seed. And because there are only 6 teams in Division 6, they will get a bye in the first round. Woodland Christian is the number 2 seed. They finished with a record of 9-1, but Bradshaw Christian gets the nod as the 1 seed due to their strength of schedule overall, as well as the quality of their league schedule additionally. So both of those 2 teams, though, the 1 and the 2, will get a bye and will host that second round game. The first round games, which will take place this coming Friday, November 15th, Brookside Christian, the 4 seed, with a record of 7-3. They will host a home game in the top half of the bracket against Forest Hill, who finished with a record of 6-4. In the lower half of the bracket, the 3 seed is Ripon Christian. They had a record of 8-2, and they will host Stone Ridge Christian with a record of 5-5. So that is your bracket. Bradshaw Christian, the 1, Woodland Christian, the 2 seed, the 3 seed Ripon Christian, the 4 seed Brookside Christian, the 5 Forest Hill, the 6 seed Stone Ridge Christian. That's your Division 6 bracket. And just taking a look at this, Bob, first blush, your thoughts here on Division 6. Bradshaw Christian, certainly very strong.
Well, very strong and in one of the stronger leagues. And if you look at the offensive production that they've come up with, 500 yards of total offense. Really, this looks like it certainly could very well be a 1 versus a 2 at the end.
Now let's take a look at Division 5, and we'll get our Division 5 bracket up there for you. Again, this is a 6-team bracket in Division 5, and no surprise here, the number 1 seed, LeGrand, the Bulldogs, looking for their 4th Division 5 title, 3 in a row right now, and they're looking for their 4th, led by head coach Rick Martinez. They finished undefeated this year, 10-0 so far. They are the 1 seed, and again, they get that bye in the first round. They'll play on November 22nd. The number 2 seed is Mariposa, 8-2 overall. They will also get a bye and play on the 22nd. The first round games, again, this coming Friday. Rio Vista is the 4 seed in that upper half of the bracket with a record of 8-2. They will take on Waterford at home. Rio Vista will be hosting there, and Waterford a record of 5-5 on the road against Rio Vista. The winner will play LeGrand. In the lower half of the bracket, Golden Sierra gets the 3 seed with a record of 5-5. The 6 seed is Delhi. They are also 5-5. The winner of that game will face Mariposa. So Division 5, you look at this one, Bob, and right off the top, LeGrand, such a great track record in recent years, always churn out fantastic football players and hard-nosed, hard-hitting football. 10-0, can anyone unseat this Bulldog team? Your first glance at this bracket, what do you see?
Well, I see a breakup of we have two teams that can run the ball and pass the ball, and that's LeGrand and Mariposa. And then the other four specifically run the ball. A lot of the smaller teams without the talent that the bigger teams have to rely on ball control offense to try to keep the score down and try to make sure that they keep keep control of the ball. So Rio Vista, Waterford are basically the same team, and then you have Golden Sierra and Delhi who barely run the ball. And so really again it looks like an issue of balance here may determine this particular division.
Now let's take a look at Division 4. And again, folks, we will get in deeper on the brackets as we go through the show and actually give you our picks at the end as to who we think is going to win in all these different divisions. But let's look at Division 4. And now this is where we start to get into the 16 teams in the brackets. Division 4, the number 1 seed is Central Catholic with a record of 9-1, the defending state champion. They will play the number 16 seed Marysville. Marysville with a record of 6-4. That game will be at Central Catholic. Right below that, the 8-9 game is Colfax at the 8. They will host with a record of 8-2 against Sierra, the 9 seed with a record of 7-3. As you move down the bracket, Calaveras is the 5 seed, a record of 8-2. They will host Houston, the number 12 seed, with a record of 6-4. And then completing that top half of the bracket, the number 4 seed is Ripon with a record of 9-1. Dixon is the 13 seed. They will be on the road, a record of 6-4 overall this year. As you move to the bottom half of the bracket, we'll start with the 3 seed, Capital Christian, with a record of 9-1. They will host Placer, who finished the year at 500, 5-5. Center is the 6 seed with a record of 7-3. They will face Modesto Christian, the 11 seed, a 6-4 record overall this year for Modesto Christian. Amador is the 7 seed, 9-1 this season. They will face Escalon, the 10 seed, a record of 6-4. And the number 2 seed in Division 4 is Hilmar, undefeated this year, 10-0. They will face Liberty Ranch, the number 15 seed, a record of 6-4. And now as we start to get into more teams, Bob, a lot of folks who thinking maybe Hilmar would get the 1 seed here. It ends up being Central Catholic. We'll hear from Will DeBoard in just a few moments from the Sac-Joaquin section as to how Central Catholic got chosen over Hilmar. But it starts to get really interesting as you have more teams in the mix, and there's some strong candidates here in Division 4.
Well, there are, and Central Catholic and Hilmar are two very different teams. Central Catholic runs the ball. Hilmar has a more balanced passing attack, but Central Catholic does what they do very, very well. And so really you couldn't go wrong with either one of those. There are 4 teams, as I see it, in this division that are really well balanced and may have a really good opportunity to unseat a team that relies exclusively on the rush. Because if you run into a team that can stop the rush and that's all you do, well, if you're only averaging 5 passing attempts, a game, you don't have much to fall back on.
That's true. And if you get down early, it makes it very difficult to come back if you are a primarily running football team.
Yeah, if you can't break through the line and you can't, get big chunks of yardage and you can't score quickly, which we've seen many quick scores with the running attack. But if you're unable to do that because the defense is well established and has a plan of attack that's working, then a running only attack may not serve you particularly well.
Well, we will see how Division 4 unfolds. Let's take a look at Division 3. And for Division 3, the number 1 seed is American Canyon. 9-1 this season, American Canyon. They are the 1 seed, and they will host the 16 El Dorado, who finished the year 6-4. Christian Brothers is the 8 seed. They get a home game. 7-3. They will face Pacheco, who also finished with a 7-3 record. Those swing games, 8-9 games, always very difficult. We'll see if Pacheco, making a long trip up from Los Banos, how they fare against Christian Brothers. That's your 8-9 game. The 5 seed Sacramento, 8-2 this year. They will host Benicia, who's the number 12 seed. Benicia 7-3. Patterson is the number 4 seed. They finished 9-1. They will take on Oakdale, who's the 13 seed, a record of 6-4. Moving to the bottom half of the bracket, Inderkum is the 3 seed in Division 3, 8-2 this year. They will host Lincoln of Lincoln, 7-3. They are the 14 seed. Vanden is the 6, 7-3. They will host Vista del Lago, the 11, also a 7-3 record this year. Rosemont is the 7 seed, 8-2 overall. They will host Casa Roble at 7-3, and the number 2 seed is Manteca, 9-1. They will face Central Valley, the 15 seed, a record of 6-4. So Division 3, American Canyon 9-1, Manteca also 9-1, top 4 seeds very strong, Bob.
Yeah, and really, there are a couple of interesting matchups that could happen if things play out the way we think they will with some of the favorites playing. We could very well see a very pass-happy offense with Sacramento running up against a very run-happy offense with American Canyon, and so I did more tossing of coins in this particular division than I did with any others. So I think this is wide open and could be anybody's ball. I wouldn't be surprised to see a myriad of upsets in this particular division.
Now let's take a look at Division 2. Division 2 starts with Del Oro as the 1 seed, a record of 8-2. They will be hosting River Valley, who gets in with the 16 seed, 6-4 overall this year. So River Valley at Del Oro. Cosumnes Oaks at 7-3 gets the 8 seed. They will host Whitney, also an identical record, 7-3. Grant is the 5 seed, 7-3 overall. Downey is their opponent. The 12 seed, 7-3, will travel to Grant for their first round game. All these games taking place next Friday, November 15th. A couple of exceptions in all these different divisions. We'll let you know about those that we know of towards the end of our show. Yuba City is the number 4 seed, 9-1. They will face St. Mary's out of Stockton, a record of 7-3 this year for the Rams. So they will travel to Yuba City to face the Honkers. Elk Grove is the 3 seed, 9-1. Atwater, the 14 seed, 6-4. Burbank is the 6. They will host Wood. Burbank is 8-2. Wood 7-3. Vacaville is the number 7 seed. They are 7-3. They will face Rockland, the number 10, also at 7-3. And Rio Linda is the number 2 seed in Division 2, a record of 9-1. They will take on Antelope, the 15 seed, with a record of 7-3. Well, once again, Division 2, very, very tough, as it's been throughout Sac-Joaquin. It seems like every year in the Sac-Joaquin section, Division 2, one of the toughest divisions statewide.
Well, and I was at the Del Oro Rockland game last night, and those two teams really had a really difficult time running the ball against each other. And when they were able to run with any kind of effectiveness at all, it really opened up the passing game. And Del Oro is the number 1 seed. I really was looking for any reason to pick an upset in that, and I just couldn't bring myself to do it. But I wouldn't be surprised to see teams like Whitney or Atwater come out of this, even though they may be middle to low seeds.
Now let's take a look at Division 1, which will wrap up our brackets here for Divisions 1 through 6. And no surprise to anybody, just like Grand being the number 1 seed in Division 5 is really no surprise to anyone. Folsom runs the table. They go undefeated. The Bulldogs are the 1 seed. They will host Lincoln of Stockton, who finished with a record of 4-6. They are the 16 seed. Franklin of Elk Grove, with a record of 7-3, is the 8 seed. They will face off against Pittman with an identical record. That's the 8-9 game. That game will actually take place on Saturday, not Friday, at Cosumnes Oaks at 7 o'clock in the evening. Merced is the 5 seed, a record of 8-2. They will face Jesuit. That Jesuit game ending late, Jesuit falling in overtime. They drop down a little bit to the 12th spot. They are on the road at Merced. Tracy is the number 4 seed, a record of 9-1. They will take on the 13 seed Edison, who finished 7-3. Now the number 3 seed, Oak Ridge, 9-1. Napa is the 14 seed. They will face Oak Ridge, 6-4 overall this year for Napa. Tokay, 8-2. They are the 6th seed. That game is going to take place at the Lodi Great Bowl on Friday. Granite Bay is the 11 seed, 7-3. They will be on the road. Pleasant Grove and Modesto at Downey High School. Pleasant Grove, the 7 seed, a record of 8-2. Modesto, the 10 seed, a record of 7-3. The game again at Downey High School. And the number 2 seed is Stagg, 9-1. The 15 seed Bayer, 6-4. That completes your Division 1 brackets and your brackets in all of the different divisions, and they will be posted on the CIF Sac-Joaquin Section website in just a little bit, folks, cifsjs.org. That'll give you an opportunity to go over those in more detail. I know we put them up on our screen briefly for you so you could figure out who is playing whom, but you can now go to the CIF Sac-Joaquin Section website here in just the next few minutes and start to look at those yourself. Meanwhile, Bob, Division 1, can anyone knock off Folsom? I mean, they have played so well all year long. It seems unfathomable at one level that anyone can take out the Bulldogs this particular year. They've been on a roll.
Well, offensive juggernaut certainly are two words that come to mind when you're talking about Folsom, but I think if anybody can do it, it's Stagg. I mean, you look at Stagg's offense, and they're right down the middle, rushing and passing. They do both equally well. They have a reasonably easy road, I think, to the finals. Folsom's got a couple of good teams they have to get through. They have to get through Franklin. They have to get through Jesuit. But are they on the same level as Folsom? Probably not. I think this is probably a 1-2. Which is what we're looking at now, but we'll look at some of the other breakdowns of some of the other matches before we get there.
We'll have those predictions for you a little bit later on in the show, but up next, folks, we're going to bring on Will DeBoard from the Sac-Joaquin section to talk about how it is that they came up, the section did, with their committee. How did they come up with the brackets the way they did? How did they end up with the seating the way it turned out? We'll have questions for him, and the show continues here from Sac-Joaquin Section headquarters in Lodi, California. It's the CIF Sac-Joaquin Section playoff preview show for football right here on the NFHS Network and the NFHSnetwork.com. We are high school. Back with more in a moment.
At Les Schwab, along with great prices, our tires come with the kind of protection most other places just don't give you, which includes free flat repairs, equal value replacements, pre-trip safety checks, and more for the entire life of the tire. With the other guys, well, you just never know. So why is free protection on your tires good to have?
Lifetime protection. That's our best tire value promise. Les Schwab, doing the right thing since 1952.
Back here on the CIF Sac-Joaquin Section playoff preview show for football. Jeff Kurtz now joined by Will DeBoard of the Sac-Joaquin Section. Will participating on the committee today and assisting with at least putting the brackets together and some of the conversation. And I'm sure people sitting at home are looking at the brackets now up on the CIF Sac-Joaquin Section website in just a few moments, and they're wondering, well, yeah, sure, Folsom and LeGrand probably obvious number ones, but how did you end up with American Canyon at number one? How did you select here and there? So what I wanted to do with you, Will, is go through, starting with Division 6, and give you an opportunity to enlighten our audience as to how is it that it looks the way it does after all the conversation this afternoon.
Absolutely.
And certainly a lot of interesting things occurred as we were waiting on pins and needles for the outcome of the Jesuit game this afternoon as well.
For sure, we actually had that on a live stream. We're watching it through J-High. For whatever reason, they're not on the NFHS network, but we'll work on them, I guess.
Exactly. A lot of schools are actually going to be covering playoff games on the NFHS network. So, folks, if you want to catch coverage of first-round games, go back to our schedule page early part of next week. You'll probably see a lot of teams on there who are participating in the network who are going to be providing first-round coverage of those games. But Division 6 to start out with, Bradshaw Christian, 8-2 this year. But if you were just the average layperson taking a look at these brackets for the first time and you're a fan of high school football, but maybe you haven't dived in depth yet to the Sac-Joaquin Section football coverage over the course of the year, you look at Woodland Christian and say, well, they're 9-1. Shouldn't they be the number one seed? How did Bradshaw Christian end up with a 1 seed in Division 6?
Well, we kind of saw it in quite a few of our divisions this year. The committee really looked at strength of schedule, and Bradshaw Christian plays in the SDL, which is a bit tougher league than the SMAL, which is where Woodland Christian plays, and also just had a tougher schedule all the way through. That's a program steeped in tradition. They've won section titles. Bradshaw Christian has, and they were actually in D5 really up until pretty much up until today. Then Vacaville Christian fell out of the tournament. Delhi came in, which pushed Bradshaw down to 6, and that's kind of where it was. I mean, that was this was a very difficult day. It was this was by far our most challenging meeting of the 4 years that we've done this, but this was actually one of the easier calls. Bradshaw Christian has clearly played a tougher schedule. that's a very strong team, and they deserve the number 1 seed.
What about for Division 5? This one seemed almost a no-brainer, maybe less of a conversation than Bradshaw Christian in Division 6. LeGrand, 3-time champion already, 10-0 this year. Mariposa, a solid season at 8-2, but that seemed a pretty clear cut. LeGrand's going to be 1, Mariposa's going to be a 2 seed.
And this is a division where 4 of the 6 teams are from the Southern League, and LeGrand obviously won that league. That was really the easiest bracket to put together. All 4 of the Southern League teams are split up. They're not playing each other in the first round. They may very well be playing each other in the second round. Golden Sierra and Rio Vista, the 2 SDL teams, are there. That's the runner-up and the number 3 team from that league. Bradshaw Christian was the champ, but they're going to get a home game, and if they win, they get to go on the road and head to the Deep South.
What are some of the parameters, Will, for when you're selecting teams and where they get placed? Obviously, some of it is strength of schedule, but you mentioned league champions. How do league champions, where does that fall in? Are they guaranteed a home game? Like, what is, you win your league, what's the benefit to you come playoff time, other than maybe you get a better seed because you did win your league?
You do get a better seed. We seed, our brackets are originally seeded by overall wins. So once our 64 teams, or in this case our 12 teams in Division 5 or 6 are chosen, they're split up by enrollment. These 6 teams are divided by overall wins, and if there are 3 or 4 8-win teams, the league champs are going to be seated ahead of all the other 8-win teams. So,
all right, well, let's take a look at Division 4 again. We'll get that bracket back up on the screen for you so you could take another look. And Central Catholic, again, might seem like an obvious number 1, but if I was the casual fan, I'd go, well, Hilmar went undefeated. I mean, Central Catholic lost. I know they're the defending state champion, but shouldn't Hilmar be the one? And then you've got Amador at 9-1 down at a 7 seed. But you take a look at those top 4 seeds. Ripon 9-1, Capital Christian 9-1, Hilmar 10-0, and then Central Catholic at 9-1. Then you've got a 7 at 9-1. I mean, that probably was a difficult conversation, or it's certainly difficult to sort out for you guys.
Oh yeah, you guys got here just as we were finishing that argument, and I think we ended up redrawing the bracket, and we drew a bracket up, and we realized there was something in there we couldn't do due to our rules. We had moved a team too many spots up, 4 spots instead of 3. We can't do that, and ended up redrawing the bracket. And this was a case where Central Catholic, Hilmar, Ripon, they were at the top of the bracket along with Capital Christian. Well, Capital Christian has had a great year. They're 9-1. They won a league title, outstanding. Their loss is to Amador, who finished 2nd in their league to Calaveras, who lost by 35 points to Modesto Christian, who finished 4th in the TVL. It really
so you can see the conundrum right there.
It really caused a lot of head-to-head issues, and ultimately we felt, Central Catholic, they're a defending state champ. They are 9-1, whereas Hilmar is 10-0. By our rules, Hilmar started off as a 10-0. As 10-0, they were the number 1 seed. We switched them, which gave us some relief in other situations. For instance, Hilmar and Ripon being 2 of the top 3 seeds, really. They're in the same league. We had to split them up, and it caused other problems as well. You have a team like Center, who's a very strong team, the PVL champion, and Placer, who was actually the co-champion with Center. They lost Center last night. Placer was 5-5. They were the 16th seed originally. So originally, one of our strongest teams was lined up to play Hilmar. Committee didn't feel that was right. They shuffled things quite a bit. The D4 bracket is really messed up, but messed up in a way that it has been moved around a lot. But ultimately, you want to separate the top 4 teams, and we feel we did that. It is a little unorthodox to have Placer and Center, the league co-champs. They could potentially run into each other in the first round. Obviously, Capital Christians, and Modesto Christian both are going to have something to say about that. But ultimately, we want the top 4 teams. If they are the top 4 teams, they're going to meet in the semifinals, and this bracket does that.
Is that how you look at that too, when all is said and done? I mean, obviously there can be upsets in the course of a playoff, but when you look at this, when you get to the semifinals, do you say, hey, we did our job right because 1 through 4 are there?
That's the hope. I mean, we say that. I don't know if everybody out there is saying
sure.
that, but when you put these football brackets together, I think you make half the people happy and half the people upset no matter what. But ultimately, we try to do the most fair job that we can. And you're exactly right. If the perceived top 4 teams are separated and they keep winning, they should be meeting in the semis instead of maybe the first round or the second round.
I guess another way to say it is you've got half the teams that are happy and the other half that have bulletin board material.
Exactly. We're doing all of them a favor.
Exactly. They're very good. Division 3 next. And Division 3 ended up with American Canyon as the 1 seed at 9-1, Manteca the 2 seed at 9-1, the 3 seed Intercom at 8-2, the 4 seed Patterson at 9-1. So talk about that a little bit. Again, Patterson at 9-1, you would think just by record alone they jump over Intercom and become the 4. The 3. Intercom would become the 4, but that was not the case here. Why?
Correct. That was a move we did make, and this is a bracket we didn't make a lot of moves to. Intercom was originally the 4. Intercom is 8-2. They won their league. They lost 2 close games to Pleasant Grove, who's a very strong team in Division 1, and Rockland, who's a very strong team in D2. Rockland, in fact, just lost 14-13 to Del Oro last night for the SFL title. Intercom's a team that we really have to watch out for, and we felt they should probably be moved opposite the number 1 seed. So that was a trade that was made. Patterson and Intercom, those matchups remain the same. Intercom was still lined up to play Lincoln. We just took each of those games and basically traded them across.
Now let's take a look at Division 2, that bracket again, and the number 1 seed Del Oro. You just mentioned Del Oro beating Rockland last night, 14-13. How if that had been the other way around, if Rockland had won that game, 14-13, I'm going to ask you to speculate here a little bit. Well, how much would that have thrown the Division 2 bracket into disarray coming into today?
Not too much, because Del Oro and Rockland had the same record. We would have just probably seen Rockland as the number 1 seed, and Del Oro at the 10 seed where Rockland was, where Rockland is now. This was, if Division 4 was not our toughest division to put together, this is a bracket with 10 league champions out of 16 teams. Also, you have 2 non-league champions. Rockland lost by a point to Del Oro, who's the number 1 seed. Del Oro has 2 losses. They lost to 2 teams out of section down south. One was down south, and I'm pretty sure the other one was a team we've heard of called De La Salle. So
yes.
Very, very strong schedule. They always have a strong schedule. They went from the 4 to the 1, and we basically moved everybody down from there. But this is we have a couple of league champions playing against league champions in the first round. You have Rockland, who's a league runner-up. They're playing a league champ, and you have St. Mary's, who's a league runner-up. That's a very strong team as well. A lot of history there. This is by far our deepest bracket.
I can't recall St. Mary's being in all the way down at a 13 seed before, and pretty remarkable that Rockland, 1 point is the difference between the 1 seed and the 10 seed in Division 2.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. It's that close. It really is.
Rio Linda 9-1 against Antelope, 7-3. Rio Linda the 2 seed. Antelope's had a very strong program, so really none of these games,
No.
Usually your first round game, if you're a high seed, maybe okay. Well, no coach is ever going to say this game's a walk or it's a pushover. We're going to win this game easily. You prep like just like Lou Holtz used to when he was at Notre Dame. Everybody, regardless of who he was playing, it was like the greatest team they've ever played in the history of the school. But Rio Linda against Antelope, I'm looking at all these games. None of these games look like, oh, this is when you can just mark up and say we're going to take this to the house, no problem.
No, not at all. I mean, good luck to the prognosticators on this one, that's for sure, because it took some time for us to even determine who the top 4 teams were, and this is a case where you kind of get maybe the top 6 or top 8 and kind of split them up as much as you can, but even then you can't really do that. I mean, the upper half of the bracket where Del Oro is the number 1 seed, there's 6 league champs up there out of 8 teams.
We're talking to Will DeBoard from the Sac-Joaquin section, who participated in the playoff committee selection process this afternoon. Now let's take a look at that Division 1 bracket again one more time, Will. And after all that arduous process with Division 2, once the Jesuit game was settled, it must have been nice to just go, okay, well, we know who the number 1 seed is going to be here, regardless of what happens with the Jesuit game. Folsom at 10-0, but then after that, how much did that game that took place late and finished late in the afternoon, how much did that throw things off in Division 1, or did it?
Didn't throw it off a whole lot, and it's because in this division there are 4 teams from the DRL. You have Folsom, Oak Ridge was the runner-up, Pleasant Grove was the number 3 team out of that league, and then Jesuit was the 4 team. Those are teams that were all undefeated as they went into league play and are extremely strong, and probably all 4 of those teams are among our top 6 teams in that entire division. They're incredibly strong, so we knew right away they were going to be separated. If the DRL teams are really the best teams, they're going to be playing each other in the semifinals. after that, everything kind of just fell into place. There was I guess a little bit of adjustment here and there. We try to get a league champion a home game whenever we possibly can, and in this case, Modesto won the Modesto Metro Conference. They're the 10 seed, but they're playing against Pleasant Grove, who's the 7 seed. Because Pleasant Grove is not a league champ, Modesto is. Modesto's going to be a home game there.
So interesting how it all folds out, folks. Divisions 1 through 6. The championships for Division 6 are going to take place the Saturday after Thanksgiving, and for Divisions 5 and 6, the Saturday after Thanksgiving. And then the finals for Divisions 1 through 4 are going to take place on December 6th and 7th. The games in Division 5 and 6 are going to be at the Lodi Great Bowl. Divisions 1 through 4 on December 6th and 7th. That's going to be a little bit of a mouthful to say.
Yeah.
But where are those games taking place, and how do you determine which day those are and what times?
We kind of wait and see. We kind of wait and see who the matchups are. Divisions 1 and 2, they're going to be at Sacramento State. They're going to be at Hornet Stadium. Division 4 is going to be at Lincoln, and most likely Division 3 is going to be at Lincoln as well. So Lincoln of Stockton is right in the middle of the section. It's a great high school facility. There isn't a track there, so all the fans are kind of right onto the. They're almost looking down onto the field, and it's just a great atmosphere. And Sac State, we've had some great crowds come out there for our Division 1 and 2 games, and as you can see from these brackets, there could be some more great games there.
And how do you determine if it's going to be on a Friday or a Saturday? Should fans check that out in another week or two, or are you anticipating one game will be on a Friday evening, the other game will be on a Saturday evening, or how will that play out, do you think?
Definitely will be a Friday and Saturday evening for the games at Sac State. Division 4 is up in the air. It could be Friday night, it could be Saturday, and same thing with Division 3. We kind of wait and see who's playing and work our matchups that way. Just try to give teams maybe a little easier travel. Some teams would rather play on Friday night, Saturday. We definitely get a lot of calls. Everybody wants to play at a certain time, that sort of thing, and we try to do what we can and try to basically get the most people out there watching the games. And
for fans, where can they follow up and find out when the games are going to take place, who's playing where should they look for that information?
Check our website, CIFSJS.org. We'll be announcing there. On our Twitter account, we'll be posting there as well. That's at CIFSJS, and we will be keeping everybody up to date. I imagine that's going to be announced probably just the week before. Once the semifinals are done, there's going to be a post probably as early as that Friday night. Parents, we know with the stock rollout of Twitter, you've been looking for an excuse to open a Twitter account. Now there's a reason why, so you can follow the Sac-Joaquin Section. It's the Sac-Joaquin Section playoff preview show live from their headquarters here in Lodi, California. Jeff Kurtz joined by Will DeBoard. Will, thanks so much for your time. We're going to bring on Pete Sacco, the commissioner of the Sac-Joaquin Section, just a few moments to get his insight as to how the process went today, as well as give you an overall picture of the playoffs and how that's going to play out from a section perspective here on the NFHS network. We are high school folks, and we're covering the playoffs for you in the playoff preview show. Back with more in a moment.
At Les Schwab, along with great prices, our tires come with the kind of protection most other places just don't give you, which includes free flat repairs, equal value replacements, pre-trip safety checks, and more for the entire life of the tire. With the other guys, well, you just never know. So why is free protection on your tires good to have?
Lifetime protection. That's our best tire value promise. Les Schwab, doing the right thing since 1952.
At Les Schwab, along with great At Les Schwab, along with great prices, our tires come with the kind of protection most other places just don't give you, which includes free flat repairs, equal value replacements, pre-trip safety checks, and more for the entire life of the tire. With the other guys, well, you just never know. So why is free protection on your tires good to have?
Lifetime protection. That's our best tire value promise. Les Schwab, doing the right thing since 1952.
Back here on the CIF Sac-Joaquin Section football playoff preview show, Jeff Kurtz now joined by Pete Sacco, the commissioner of the Sac-Joaquin Section, to give us his insight on how he thought the meeting went today with the committee as they were putting together the playoff brackets, and then just general information about the football playoffs and all the fall championships here in the Sac-Joaquin Section. We're talking about football today, but there's going to be some great volleyball matchups going on at UC Davis, cross country coming up as well. A lot of activities here in the Sac-Joaquin Section, and really this just kind of gets your year started for playoffs as far as this goes. This is just kind of the precursor to everything that goes on when we get into winter championships, and all heck seems to break loose in the spring where we've got 10 to 12 sports going on over the course of April and May.
Yeah, this is the end of the first run of the playoffs, what we call the fall season. It's been a busy 7, 8, 9 days now around here, but it's been good. Great committee. They do a lot of great work.
Well, Will just told us the fourth year that you guys have been running the playoff selection process this way. I know it could almost, as the evolution of this goes, year one is we're working out the kinks. Year two, maybe implementing some modifications to how you guys did the selection process. Then year three. Now here you are in year four. How would you say that it went this year versus maybe the previous 3 years?
Well, Jeff, it's tough to see these tournaments. I mean, you take a look at Division II. I think Will told you how many league champs there are. You've got 4 teams that played in the state. You got Del Oro, you got St. Mary's has been there, Grant's a state champ, Rockland was then there at one time. So you have all these high-powered teams that are still good, and they're vying each other. So we've got to try to follow our rules and then work within that concept and make the brackets work.
Well, and it's easy for us as supposed experts of high school sports and even the fans at home, and I'm certain the coaches and the players, I mean, a lot of coaches will fill out there on where do you think we're going to end up and all that kind of stuff. And Will mentioned, you maybe half the people are happy and half the people are upset, but how difficult is it? I mean, you mentioned it's difficult with all the different factors that can play into it, but you really have to know the rules and the bylaws of the section and how the playoffs were laid out. This isn't just kind of a committee whimsy and, I think we're going to put so-and-so here versus here. This really, you have bylaws you need to follow, correct? And how are those determined?
Yeah, it's the policies we have. It's the rules again. The playoffs are they speak for themselves, and everybody pretty much out there knew today who was in and who wasn't in. But then when you get down to moving teams around, you're right. We can't leave a quarter bracket stacked up. I mean, the coaches out there have very tunnel vision. They're concerned about their team and their quarter bracket. In this office, we're concerned about the whole tournament, and we try to spread the wealth out. We look at the records. We look at Cal Preps. We look at Max Preps. We're looking to see where people are ranked. And then within the rules, we're trying to make it work and honor league champions when we can. A perfect example of that is giving Modesto High School a first-round home game over Pleasant Grove, who really was the 3rd seed out of the DRL. DRL may be the best league, but, Modesto High deserved that home game. So it's a matter of trying to balance all those things and move everybody around. If you just let the numbers fall, you could have one half of the bracket have the 8 best teams in the section just by virtue of how the numbers fall. So you put the numbers in place, and then you retweak in every sport. And you got to take a look across this country of ours. There's no system that's perfect. There is no. If there is a system, they use it. Look at the NCAA basketball. Mm-hmm. They have a committee that sits in a room for a week, and people debate that. So we understand it's debatable. My goal, my job, the job of Will, John Williams, and myself is to make sure the brackets are fair for everybody. One team may be unhappy, but you know what? If you win 4 games, you're going to win the section championship. So there is an option there to go get the job done on the field.
What do you view as success for the tournament for you guys? When you look at when you've done your seeding today, a lot's going to play out over the next 3 to 4 weeks. When all is said and done, what do you view as success in terms of the football playoffs?
Well, we view it as success that the teams go out there and have a good experience, and they enjoy the experience. They have good competition, and ultimately the best team wins. I think, Jeff, over my 21st year on the job, I've come to realize I've now defined 5 different types of schools, at least within our section. There's those schools that say, this year, let's go 500, maybe 6-4, and let's make the playoffs. I think there was 2 teams 6-4 this year that didn't make the playoffs. There's a second type of school that says, we're going to get in the playoffs, and maybe we can make a run. Maybe we can get into 2 rounds. Maybe we can get to the semifinals. There's the third school that says, let's go deep in the playoffs. We got a chance to get there. There's the fourth school, which is a lot of our Division II schools. We're going to win this thing. And then we're going to get to the NorCal, which we now have and have a shot. And then there's the elite. The goal is to win the state. That's the ultimate goal. So within the framework of how we function, you got 5 different types of schools, and all are very valid, from winning the state to just making the playoffs. So we have to make that work within our structure and try to give everybody a positive experience.
And I've covered football games now and high school sports across just about every single section in the state of California. And this I found in the Sac-Joaquin section is one of the more enthusiastic generally. Like you'll find pockets here and there in different sections or a school where there's a rabid fan base. But generally I found the Sac-Joaquin section as a whole has a very enthusiastic fan base for football and for high school sports as a whole section. What can fans look for here in the fall with football? What do you advise them in terms of either games to see or how they should go out and participate or where they should head? Like what information do you have for the fans that is going to benefit them as they look forward to this particular playoff time for the football playoffs?
Well, I think follow your home school. That's obviously the most important thing. That's where you need to your main interest has got to be. Other than that, I think if your school, if they get eliminated, you got your choice of a lot of great different types of games. One of the things that makes this part of the state so great is our small towns. Whether you go to Escalon, whether you go to Calaveras, whether you want to head up the foothills a little bit and go up to Colfax, these are great communities that follow their schools. Escalon's run a couple years in state football. That could be written into a book, how that all came to play. Then you got your Folsoms, you got your Powers, you got your Grants, you got your Deloros, you got Rocklands. As we move toward our finals, December 6th and 7th, whether you're at Sac State or at Lincoln of Stockton, you're going to see some of the best football in the state of California.
Well,
there's no fans and doubts about it.
You mentioned those first two schools, Escalon and Calaveras. I mean, that was one of the epic championships in the Sac-Joaquin section, was that Division IV game a few years back when Escalon won it with a field goal in the final moments of the game. I mean, that was just an amazing game. And so I think fans, you really are going to be treated to, if you have not attended a football game, high school football game recently, maybe your kids left high school a little while ago and you haven't been back to a game, or maybe you've been considering, well, I don't know if I want to make it or not, you should definitely go and check it out because you'll see some just amazing play here over the next 3 to 4 weeks.
Yeah, we're looking forward to some great playoffs.
And what about for the rest of the fall sports? We've got volleyball at UC Davis coming up on the Thursday. I believe it's the 21st. Yeah,
Right.
The 21st, and cross-country championships as well. Do you know approximately how many athletes in your section are going to be participating in playoffs over the course of the next 3 to 4 weeks until the finals are complete?
Well, they say research that we have 225,000 students in our section approximately, and they say a quarter of that play high school sports, so 60-some thousand kids play. You're putting me on the spot with that number, but with all the
Ballpark?
sports, we've got thousands of kids. I know we'll have a couple thousand. We have a couple thousand kids running it today. 3,000 kids running it up at Frogtown for cross country. That's one sport. And then we'll cut that in half of the finals next week. But, we have soccer going on. This next week, everybody says, Pete, you got football playoffs. No, we got more than football playoffs. This section's about everything. And we just finished tennis. We just finished golf. We're going to go to state in a week and a half. We're represented there by a couple young ladies. We have our volleyball coming up for the next 2 weeks, our soccer next week, our water polo is going today. It's going to go all through next week. And then once all that kind of comes to a conclusion, we jump into NorCal volleyball, and then we jump into our football playoffs full bore. So we'll get there.
So basically you set up a cot in your office and you aren't going to be leaving there for the next 3 to 4 weeks while you guys organize all this stuff. Is that how that works?
I think the three of us in the office here pretty much know that we'll be spending a lot of time here. And John and Will, I tell you what, everybody in our section needs to know that this section could not function without them. They really generate the numbers. They put the numbers down on the paper, and then I come in and kind of beat them up and want to make sure we're doing everything the right way.
John Williams, the assistant commissioner here in the section.
They do a great job.
And Will DeBoer, the director of marketing. So, Pete, anything else for the fans that you'd like them to know before we let you go? We appreciate you having us in here to host the preview show today and everything. But anything more for the fans that you'd want to impart to them before we let you go?
Well, first of all, I want to thank our fan support. We're blessed with great fans. And I think more importantly than that, Jeff, we want to thank you guys. We've embarked on this relationship a couple years ago when you were with a different company. It's jumped over to Play On, and I felt 2 or 3 years ago this was the wave of the future for high school sports. There's just not enough TV out there for us with all the college programs. And you guys have done a great job. The NFHS network has now been formed because of that. I think we're the leaders in California. We're one of the first sections who jumped on ship. You and your staff do a great job, and I think this relationship is going to last for a long, long time. So on behalf of the Sac-Joaquin section, my member schools, my board of managers, thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much. I mean, we're excited to be here, and we're going to be covering the soccer finals live, folks, the cross-country finals live, the volleyball finals will be live, all the football championships will be live, and several of the other rounds on the way to the championships. Water polo finals will be live. We did the golf championship live for the first time. We covered live golf here in the Sac-Joaquin section, so it's all available here on the NFHS network, and we'll continue that live coverage with wrestling, basketball, baseball, softball, boys volleyball, track, all in through the spring.
Yep.
It's all here on the web,
Good stuff.
folks.
Good stuff.
Pete, thanks so much for joining us. We'll be back wrapping up. Bob and I are going to make our predictions. Who's going to win in all these different divisions? Let you go ahead and play along with us, folks, and we'll probably say, oh, it's going to be this school, and you'll have an argument for us. That's fine. That's why we're here. Let the debate begin. Bob Moffitt back in a moment. We'll make our predictions as the playoff preview show continues here from the Sac-Joaquin section. Back with more after this.
At Les Schwab, along with great prices, our tires come with the kind of protection most other places just don't give you, which includes free flat repairs, equal value replacements, pre-trip safety checks, and more for the entire life of the tire. With the other guys, well, you just never know. So why is free protection on your tires good to have?
Lifetime protection. That's our best tire value promise. Les Schwab, doing the right thing since 1952.
Jeff Kurtz rejoined by Bob Moffitt here on the NFHS Network as we go to our final segment here at the Sac-Joaquin section and our playoff preview show for football. And this is really the fun part for us, Bob, where we get to be fans a little bit and make our prognostication as to who we think is going to win in all these different divisions. So, folks, we're going to get those graphics back up for you with our brackets on them in just a moment. And we'll start with Division 6. And work our way all the way up to Division 1. We'll lay our picks out there on the table for you. We'll let you argue with us on Twitter if you like, hashtag NFHS Network. Or if you really want to get crazy about it, hashtag you guys are wrong. Okay, fine. Go ahead and get on Twitter and show us. Heather, hashtag we are high school. So you got a lot of picks you could make here, folks, a lot of hashtags you could throw out. Probably something we weren't really talking about in the internet world last year. But now in Division 6, let's start here, Bob. Bradshaw Christian, the 1 seed, Woodland Christian, the 2 seed. And it would seem fairly simple that these two teams are going to get to the final, but I'll let you go first. How do you see this one playing out here in Division 6?
Well, I think Brookside and Forest Hill are essentially the same team. They're pretty well balanced. I think Brookside, just by virtue of a coin toss, is going to make it into the second round. Ripon Christian, I think, has a better balance. If they can stop the run, I don't think they'll have too much of a problem with Stone Ridge. And then from there, Bradshaw just has really just quite an amazing offense. Almost 190 yards per game passing, 330 yards a game rushing. They take care of the ball. And when you take those things into account, certainly Woodland Christian does a pretty good job, but I think Bradshaw Christian does a better job, and I think they're probably the clear-cut favorites.
Forest Hill has been in this championship game. Brookside Christian has won this game and been to a state championship. Bradshaw Christian has been a winner here. First of all, I think that Brookside Christian Forest Hill game is going to be fantastic. And then Bradshaw Christian, if Brookside Christian gets there and faces them, there's a lot of the coaches have built up a rivalry over the years, shall we say. And so that will be an interesting game. But if you look at it 1-2, and I do think Woodland Christian and Bradshaw Christian are going to reach the final, and I've got Bradshaw Christian winning it. But Woodland Christian's quarterbacks, and they've employed 2 this year, have combined for 27 touchdowns and 1 pick. Meanwhile, they've had 7 guys who have over 100 yards rushing, 2,013 yards rushing as a team, 37 touchdowns. So Bradshaw Christian, if they want to take this, they certainly have their work cut out for them.
They do, and I was looking at the how the quarterback breakdown had worked out, and Brendan Rodegaards has done most of the work the last couple of games, and just following along with what his predecessor had done. 6 touchdowns and no interceptions, and I think that ought to really be a fantastic game, just because they both take care of the ball. And when you have that and you're accurate passing and you can run the ball, there's going to be some defenses that are going to be out of gas.
So you have Bradshaw Christian. I have Bradshaw Christian. Let's go to Division 5. And in Division 5, LeGrand is the 1 seed again, 10-0. Mariposa the 2. And it strikes me again that LeGrand, again led by head coach Rick Martinez, and Ryan Martinez this year, 1,568 yards, 25 touchdowns on the ground. They've played Mariposa. They played them earlier in the year. That was their tightest game of the year for LeGrand. They beat them 33-20. It seems to me that LeGrand is going to get a similar matchup like that again in the finals. That game, a final game that would be played at the Great Bowl at 6 p.m. on Saturday, November 30th. We'd be reticent if we didn't mention that also the Division 6 game is going to be at 1 p.m. at the Great Bowl on Saturday, November 30th. But this game, 6 p.m., I'm thinking is likely going to be a LeGrand-Mariposa rematch.
Well, the Rio Vista-Waterford matchup I don't like really very much either way, just because they don't have much of a balanced attack. Only 8 passing attempts a game for Rio Vista. And then when you look at Delhi, though, I like them. Although they also don't pass the game at all. They have 3,500-yard total rushing this year, and that's nothing to sneeze at. But, assuming Delhi can get past Golden Sierra, which I think they will, I think Mariposa's balance will take care of them. I think LeGrand's balance will take care of whoever wins the Rio Vista-Waterford game. I think they're the same team. And then, as much as it pains me to say, because you're talking to a Grizzly, I gotta pick LeGrand to beat my alma mater.
Head over heart on that one, I take it.
I'm afraid so.
But if you see someone in a Mariposa sweater jumping up and down at that football game, that might be our very own Bob Moffitt here on the NFHS Network if we don't have him covering that game. Division 4. Let's go to Division 4 next. Central Catholic is the 1 seed. Hillmar is the 2. Boy, there's a lot of history in this particular division. Escalon has been a recent champion in Division 4. They're all the way down at the 10 seed. Calaveras at the 5. They were in that game. I talked about it with Pete Sock a little bit, that epic game a few years back where Escalon won in the final moments. Hillmar undefeated, might be thinking they were snubbed a little bit with a 10-0 record. Central Catholic, certainly a great argument for number 1. How do you see this one playing out?
Well, on paper at least, I got a pretty big upset coming out of this
Oh,
one.
boy.
I like Colfax. I like Colfax a lot, and they just came off of a pretty decent win over Lincoln. I know they're the number 8 seed, but I really like the balance that they have. Their quarterback play has really been outstanding, 35 touchdowns versus only 10 interceptions. And a lot of these teams that run the ball, they also face teams that only run the ball. And so you have defenses that are used to battling teams that run the ball. And so when you come up against somebody that passes the ball well and runs the ball well, as Colfax do, I got Colfax going all the way to the final game against Hillmar. But I have Hillmar winning that game based not only on experience but also just on pure balance of attack. They'll beat you either way. They don't rely on one over the other, and that's something that's really important, I think, in the playoffs, is to not be one-dimensional.
So you've got Colfax in a second-round upset over Central Catholic.
I do.
Bob Moffitt going out on a limb. I like it.
Well, I don't want to go 1-2 all the way down. That's
Sure.
no fun for anybody.
Sure.
So I've got Central Catholic, Colfax, Calaveras, Ripon, Capital Christian, Center, Amador, and Hillmar. So I think the only non-favorite I picked was Colfax to take care of Central Catholic in the next round.
What are some of your favorite first-round matchups in this particular bracket? I mean, for me personally, I'm looking at that Amador-Escalon game and thinking, wow, that's going to be a very intriguing game. And then the other game that I'm keeping an eye on as well is Calaveras and Houston, because it would be interesting to see Calaveras and Ripon in a second-round matchup, presuming the seeding holds up through that first-round game.
Well, and you know, really, when you look at Amador, they throw the ball some, but they also have turnovers when they throw the ball. They have 11 touchdowns, but they also have 7 interceptions, which gives you pause. But you look across the way, and Escalon does the same thing, 9 touchdowns versus 7 interceptions. So as far as the passing game goes, they're basically identical. I mean, I think that game can go either way. I think Amador maybe just has a little bit more of what Escalon does.
And some of this always boils down to the matchup that you have. If you're a running team and you're facing another running team, well, that could benefit you if you are able, you're likely to have a close game. If you're a running team against a very good passing team and you're able, but you've got a good defense, maybe you can shut them down. But if you get behind, like we talked about at the top of the show, that could be a problem, because if you're a running team, it's hard to run your way back into a game if you're trailing by 2 or 3 scores. So a lot of this will really boil down to who, how the other team plays and the matchup you've got. Or is it more at this stage, you're going to do what you do, and if that works for you, great, and if not, that's how it goes.
Yeah, and I kind of like to look at the offenses more about, because the offenses dictate the play of the game and the style of the game, and whoever can, of course, impart their will upon the opposing defense is going to be more successful. I mean, it's kind of a no-duh statement, but I mean, really, when you get down to it, that's how it works. And like you were saying, some teams have an advantage because they may be so excellent in one particular venue or the other, or running or passing. They may have an advantage if another team that's like them comes to town. So, but I agree with you that Amador-Escalon game, I think, ought to be very, very close.
Well, I'm going to go 1-2 here. As you're going out on a limb, I'm staying conservative, but I got my upset pick in Division 3. So I've got Central Catholic Hillmar in the final. I got the Raiders winning again this year at 9-1, very strong, and a lot of holdovers on that roster from last year's state champion when they went on that magnificent run through the playoffs. It was really phenomenal to watch. Their running game last year was incredible.
Yeah, and their running game this year isn't so bad.
Yeah.
They've got they have 2 guys, I think, that are combined for 2,100 yards on the season. I mean, that's you're looking at 210 yards a game. I mean,
yeah.
that's not bad.
You're going from Lamborghini from last year to Porsche this year if you're Central Catholic. We'll see how that plays out in Division 4. Let's take a look at Division 3, and this is where I've got my first upset, and I'll go ahead and go first here. I've got Inderkum winning the whole thing as the 3 seed with a record of 8-2. That means at some point along the line they got to knock off Manteca, and either American Canyon falls early or they beat American Canyon in the championship game. So American Canyon, you're the 1 seed. I had to throw down last year with a school who had been highly ranked over the course of the year. Prove me wrong, American Canyon. I got Inderkum at the 3 winning this division.
I really like Inderkum. You've got a quarterback who doesn't throw a lot, but when he does, he's effective. 4-to-1 touchdown interception ratio, and then you've got 4 guys who can run the ball. They're not. You don't have one guy you can key on because you have 4 guys who have rushed for 400 yards each. So really, who's got the ball? Where's it going? Is it going to be a pitch? Is it going to be a straight handoff? Is it going to be up the gut? I mean, they do many things well, and when you do many things well, that makes them really tough to defend. So I really can't argue with Inderkum. I thought Vista was a similar team to Inderkum, and I have Vista going all the way.
You've got the 11 seed at Vista Del Lago going all the way. Is that correct?
But for similar reasons, I just thought Vista was maybe a little better passing team than Inderkum. And then based on what I saw when I've seen Rosemont and Casa Roble play this year, I ended up with Vista going up against American Canyon, and I had Vista just based on balance beating American Canyon in the final.
See, we just gave American Canyon a lot of bulletin board material there, too, that they can use. We're getting overlooked by the experts, the so-called experts here.
I've been giving people bulletin board material for years, so you can throw this on the stack.
Just par for the course for you, huh?
Yeah, absolutely. One other team I like Sacramento. I like Sacramento. I like their balance. I just think they have too many turnovers, and that's one thing. You got to take care of the ball.
Yeah.
Regardless of whether you throw the ball or run the ball, you've got to take care of the ball, especially in playoff time when one turnover can really, if not only just what's going on in the field, but what's going on in these guys' head. If you turn the ball over, then that can be just such a huge momentum swing. So.
Well, it's like they talk about in the NBA. You've got teams that are really good regular season teams, like maybe the Los Angeles Clippers, but then they don't have a half-court game when you get to the playoffs when you really need it. Sacramento playing fast and loose during the year could really work for a very good regular season record, but then you come to the playoff time and your 8-2 record, if you're loose with the football, could really come back to hurt you.
Yeah, absolutely. And just following up on the analogy, I mean, you look at what happened to Denver last year. I mean, they were fantastic, and then they get to the playoffs and they sink. So you got to take care of the ball. You can run the ball, pass the ball, do whatever you want. But I think the more balanced teams will have really a better chance against teams that are one-dimensional. Although you can make the argument that teams that run the ball don't throw interceptions. So
yeah,
and that's where turnovers.
What's
come
the
a
old
lot of times.
analogy? At least, or the old saying? It used to be three things can happen when you throw the football, and two of them are bad. But a lot of folks have thrown that out the window now because everyone seems to be, offenses are trending more towards throwing the football down the field. So, Division II. Let's take a look at the Division II bracket one more time. Del Oro is the 1 seed here. Rio Linda the 2. The 3 seed is Elk Grove. The 4 seed is Yuba City, and despite the fact that the 2, 3, and 4 seeds have better records than Del Oro's strength of schedule is phenomenal this year. Losses to De La Salle and Southern Section Power Sarah. I mean, and both game, at least the Sarah game in particular was very tight. Del Oro, I mean, that if they scheduled 2 other teams, could very easily be 10-0.
Well, and this is one of those teams that really uses the run effectively, and they are able to run a couple of different guys. They've got Dylan Cainrath, he's had 20 touchdowns on the year, and he runs the ball effectively. He may not run for huge chunks of yardage, but he does get something. And so they put themselves in positions where they're able to have third and short a lot. And that was one thing that was really key, is that they were able to hold on to the ball for a long period of time against Rockland yesterday. That said, I'm not all that impressed with what I saw with Del Oro, and I really was looking for any reason to have somebody knock them off. I just couldn't with the way the section was scheduled.
Well, and you look at these games, and it wouldn't be shocking to me if Antelope advanced out of the first round. It wouldn't be shocking to me if we saw either the 7 seed Vacaville or the 10 seed Rockland advance to the semifinals or even the finals. It wouldn't be shocking to me if St. Mary's got on a roll and ended up beating Yuba City and maybe even knocking off Grant or Downey, whoever comes out of it. I mean, it would not, I think, be shocking at all to see a lot of lower seeds working their way into the quarterfinals and semis in this division.
I like St. Mary's, and in fact, I've got them going to the, I guess that would be the quarterfinals against Del Oro, based on balance of attack. And I mean, they're throwing about 190 yards and more than 200 yards on the ground, and I really like their attack. But I think Del Oro, just maybe that strength of schedule and just that experience and seeing so many really fantastic, near college level offenses in some cases, will really serve them well. So I didn't really want to, but I ended up picking them to at least go to the finals.
So who do you have in the championship game, and who do you have winning, Bob?
I have Rio Linda and Del Oro, and I have Rio Linda. And again, I think Rio Linda, for once, for all my talk about, balance of attack, I think Rio Linda's rushing attack is so phenomenal. I really think when you do one thing and you do it fantastically well, sometimes there's no stopping you. And that's kind of that's the feeling I get from Rio Linda. And I think if Rockland had a better rushing attack yesterday, I think they would have won that game. And I think if Rio Linda comes to town, they won't need to throw the ball. I think they'll beat them with the run.
Well, I've got a Rockland-Del Oro rematch in the championship game. 1 point separated Rockland from the 1 seed in Division II versus the 10 seed. And I see that being a rematch in the championship game, and this time Rockland coming out on top over Del Oro in that D2 final.
Yeah, I liked Rockland the second play of the game threw a 70-yard touchdown pass, but then the rest of the game they struggled to complete much of anything, and the running game was really non-existent. So based on that, really just on recent performance, I really didn't like what I saw from Rockland.
Well, we'll see how that goes. As now let's look at Division I and the Division I bracket, and Folsom is the 1 seed, and we would be remiss, Bob, if we didn't mention over the course of the broadcast the fantastic season that Jake Browning has had in what has become, in recent history for Folsom, great quarterbacks coming out of the Bulldog program. And you think you've finally seen the best. You've got Dan O'Graves, then Tyler Trocine comes out, and you see him play well, and it's like, boy, these kids are putting up Madden-like numbers on the high school football field. This is clearly the pinnacle of what we've seen in the quarterback play coming from Folsom. And then Jake Browning goes out and throws 56 touchdown passes in the regular season and sets a state record. All over 5.5 touchdown passes per game. Just amazing what Folsom's been able to do out there.
Well, they use the pass for their running game. They use the pass for their passing game. I mean, they should use the pass for the kicking game if they could, but they don't need to kick. So I guess that's the only two you need. Yeah, it's phenomenal what they've done. And again, much like Rio Linda, if you develop something and you were able to do it better than anybody else, and you were able to do it to such a high quality that nobody can stop you, then sometimes that beats any kind of balance requirement. And their running game's not terrible, but they don't really need to run much. Yeah, I got Folsom and Stagg, but I really like Stagg. Stagg's numbers aren't bad either. They've got 59 touchdowns on the year, 30 passing and 29 rushing. And that's not bad.
No, not at all. And I'm going to ask about Granite Bay. And from the perspective of Granite Bay and Folsom were the representatives from the Sac-Joaquin section last year in the NorCal Regionals, and Folsom ran up against De La Salle. And that's tough for anybody to beat De La Salle. De La Salle advanced to the state final. Granite Bay won, though, advanced to the state final and ended up winning the state championship. Now this year they're an 11 seed. Do they have any chance of getting out of the lower half of the bracket at all and making a run like they did last year?
You know, I don't think so. I like their passing game. It's efficient. They don't turn the ball over, 5-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio. But I really liked Tokabe's balance attack. Their numbers are similar as far as touchdowns and interceptions. As long as you can control the ball, they've got 11 guys who carry the ball and who can carry it at any time. And I think their attack offensively, rushing is a little bit better, and passing may not be quite as good, but I think the balance is there, that I don't think Granite Bay's going to come through that one.
Well, I've got Folsom, and I'm going Pleasant Grove in the championship game with Folsom winning. So I've got a 1-7 in the D1 final, because that's how we roll here on the NFHS network sometimes, folks. So there you got it. Those are Bob's picks. Those are my picks. Now we've got your picks. And I'm sure you could post those wherever on our Facebook page. Go to the NFHS Network. You could say, boy, you guys are way off base. Fine. Tell us why. And then we'll see how it all plays out, folks, over the next 4 weeks to the championship in Divisions 1 through 4, and then 3 weeks for Divisions 5 and 6. That's going to do it, though, folks, for our playoff preview show here from the Sac-Joaquin section and Sac-Joaquin section headquarters, and a lot of people to thank for putting this broadcast on. First of all, you for watching it. Thanks so much for joining us as we unveil the playoff brackets for football for the first time in the Sac-Joaquin section here today on the show. But then our crew here on the NFHS network. Our producer today has been Nathan Schemmel, cameraman Tim King, researcher and statistician Brian Vilvin. My broadcast partner has been Bob Moffitt. I am Jeff Kurtz, also thanking the Sac-Joaquin section staff for hosting us as well. Let the playoffs begin, folks. Games begin next Friday, November 15th. Check the NFHS Network schedule page for the matchups and games that we will be covering on our network. And then the rest of our championship coverage, soccer, water polo, girls volleyball, cross country, we've got it all. It's the NFHS Network. We are high school. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
At Les Schwab, along with great prices, our tires come with the kind of protection most other places just don't give you, which includes free flat repairs, equal value replacements, pre-trip safety checks, and more for the entire life of the tire. With the other guys, well, you just never know. So why is free protection on your tires good to have?
Lifetime protection. That's our best tire value promise. Les Schwab, doing the right thing since 1952.